Thank you, Lola. Actually, the dog. Thank you.
Mine. And I thank you to the Ake Festival, to Lord, really. Thank you to the Ake Festival, to Lord, really, really wonderful. And we talk about Washington, but
Yeah.
really great to be here.
Yeah. Particularly this business of mixing prose and poetry. Can you speak a bit about that?
Yes, in fact, because I was sad to see poetry confined within. It happened by coincidence that I went into prose for the signing, and it was a great event. And somebody said something, a bit of prose in the prose.
Yes,
yeah.
Thank you. Is this business of oral tradition, repetition of the story? Do this to you all must read questions, but actually we're not doing it enough, and people sometimes
Of oral tradition is so great in terms of the freedom that it gives to the writer. That means you can use history and you can even use political language. And you have this interaction constantly with the public, with the audience. And I read so many writers who were inspired by oral tradition that it stays, we all have a story in us. So we have to be given the opportunity to tell that story. So that's why I think it's so very often, like you take traditional art, culture, and art.
And of course, you want to tell our story.
Right. First, I have to say something. Yeah, after the official end of COVID, why are you talking about Ebola now? But no, in fact, if we had stayed, and after that blanket, nothing. There are lots of other disease, what would have happened? In a state of vulnerability. And
The story framed by climate change, but had you all the environment, or was it triggered by the epidemic?
Doing some research, teaching at Wits University, and this was happening in West Africa, in Guinea, Liberia, Sierra Leone, and the environment, looking at people, men with a capital M, humanity, and giving their point of view.
So it makes it a bit experimental, actually, as a novel. Have you always wanted to write and you couldn't find the form for?
Yes, of course. Have to find the form that's. I'm not even sure I have already found the form. And it's a problem. If you don't have the form, it's difficult to tell the story.
Okay. Our conversation is called The Life and Time. So I'm going to ask you what...
I must say I have been privileged because usually my work there is just maybe, so you can't take things for granted, especially if you're trying to be a bit experimental, if you don't want to be bored with what you're writing and you're trying to find new things all the time. So
struggles of being an African woman writer, do you feel the same, that had you, that there are books you could have written that you haven't had because of the pressures in your life as an African woman writer? Or have you always written what you wanted to write?
More or less. Sometimes censorship, you can deal with it. You know where it is. Censorship is the most dangerous thing, because you end up editing. Am I doing it because I'm actually the naming? Can you name, as I said the other day, name names? That means you have to say this is about this squarely. And there are some subjects. I think that's the main thing. That's the main thing.
So you would say you've been brave in your writing?
I don't even say that. It's just sometimes I'm full of anguish and I don't know. but
you always had all your works translated, or was that a struggle?
what I can say is that the best decision of my life was to be what I really wanted, because there's something, I mean, if you speak only one language and you are always want to be able to escape, to go somewhere else, to learn from other people, other offers. But yeah, it's been a world. But translation, we should have more of it. We really should have. That's the way we can talk to each other. The idea of the continent that's closer to reality. Mm-hmm.
When did you know you wanted?
And then look at it and say, oh my God, there is something. You know, I was trying to say something. And also what really triggered the writing was the main character is the one who tells the story. So in fact, he was planted in the middle of the village, and the village was around him, and he was so he saw everything. So he talks about what he saw. Spread through the one to become infected. Son can become a mortal enemy. Pity is a death sentence. An aeroplane, it threatened women who simply collapsed as though violently struck down. Human tragedy, determined to myself, so people who did not think twice about offering help. I saw people branches spread out and took on an island in the middle of the sea.
So two-part question. Why are we so quick to forget our traumas and
just take the good things and then throw away the bad things? And when it's known that when you don't kind of prod what has happened, is that maybe if we had stayed long, you look at hospitals, I mean, God forbid that you want to find yourself in a public hospital. So I think that
most impossible because it loses its meaning. So how that works for you? Yeah.
Okay. So the first question is a key.
Okay, first I have to say that wherever I have lived, I've consumed the literature, and so it's been a great writer to be published, because we forget that publishing is an industry, and books are products. I mean, we put so much in publishing and heard just because you had to be published abroad before you could tell your story. So this is an amazing improvement. That sophisticated, more complex, more to fight against.
Prolific?
I think I would find the time because you manage your time there in terms of doing research, you have to process all that.
Are you always involved in the translation of your work, and do you think something gets lost in translation?
Well, I think I see more good than bad, because it allows you to, is that how she writes? So you I've always, in that character, is it from a paternal side or a maternal side? And I love it because...
Mike, come. What are you doing back there? In front, Madam Hadisha. Here.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Otherwise, I always have kind of my French holding me back. And of course, Black American writers. And then, you know, as I said, wherever I was, I would influence, yeah.
Any other question?
Talking about your influences, the fact that the negritude and the Black American writers, and given your mixed background of being half French and half Ivorian, I'm wondering how that complexity of sort of coming from multiple identities and having to sort of deal with the issues of colonialism and having sort of the legacy in many ways of your mother's country versus your father's country? Forefront when you're writing or not?
Yeah, question. There are two ways of looking at two cultures. But I've been lucky. I was born in Paris, and very soon as a baby, I went to Côte d'Ivoire because my father decided that he wanted to take his whole family. And so I'm very aware that the process of...
There's someone back there.
Good evening, everyone. I adapted The Talking Drum, your book, for performance. What are your thoughts towards people adapting your work?
No, of course, it's all good. It's all good. I know that, for example, it was a bit of a shock because, you know, you've got something in your mind, you have created this work, giving another interpretation. And that's very much about our life, you know. We constantly interpret that. Mm-hmm.
Quite a lot of a number of your works involve fables.
Yeah.
Why are you drawn to fables?
Two cultures, but I mean, people have asked me, I've had to learn in, you know, his poetry in animals. It's only fables, all the animals of the earth, name and this has always existed in all cultures, and that's what I like. Yes. I think I am, yes. I have to keep their personality, their identity, but at the same time,
Has that grown, or do you sometimes find yourself at a loss as to what to do next?
Yes. No, I'm deceived. So it's until you're satisfied and go to the story, or I do it and
wonder if it's different from how French or Arabic-speaking countries, but we're all Africa, right? So is there a different...
In that difference, it's sometimes when it's too close to the bone, people react differently. Like I take in the company a story about what happened and the withdrawal of the French, and you know, then the kind of successive dictatorships and all that. To accept the story, if you say it straight, in a straight way, if you're not dancing around the... Because the book is in the process of being translated into, for me, electoral crisis in Côte d'Ivoire.
Okay.
Voilà. And I want